Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we've got a really chilling ghost story for you, and we're going to break it all down.
All right, so think about this. Your biggest complaint about a roommate is usually something pretty normal, right? Like they don't do the dishes or they're too loud. But what if your roommate didn't pay rent because they were a ghost? Yeah, we're diving into a true story from Thailand that starts with a simple noise complaint, but oh boy, it ends with a full-blown supernatural eviction.
So, let's set the scene. Our story starts about 10 years back with a university student named Mudme. And, like a lot of us have been there, she'd just gone through a really bad breakup. She needed a fresh start, a clean slate. And she thought she found it in this shiny new apartment building. Keyword there, thought.
Okay, so she picks out room 829. It's on the 8th floor, the top floor. The building itself is brand spanking new, never been lived in, so you can imagine it felt super safe, super modern. But here's this one little detail, something you wouldn't even think twice about. Her bed, the headboard, was right up against this thin little wall, the wall she shared with the bathroom. And that tiny, insignificant detail, well, it's about to become the source of all her problems.
All right, so the first week, totally normal. You know how it is when you move. Boxes everywhere, you're busy setting things up, going out with friends, just the usual chaos of settling in. But then, the second week rolls around. The moving noise dies down, the dust settles, and that's when she started to realize she wasn't the only one living there.
It all started with a sound, a really specific sound. Every single night, she'd hear this scraping, thumping noise. She called it a guck, guck sound. And you know exactly what it sounded like. Someone dragging a wooden chair across the floor and then letting the back of it just thump against the wall. And it was definitely coming from the room right next door, room 828.
So, after a few nights of this, with her sleep totally ruined, she just had it. I mean, who wouldn't be annoyed? So she did what any of us would do. She marched right downstairs to the manager's office to file a complaint about her super inconsiderate, noisy neighbor in 828.
But the manager just kind of looks at her, pulls out the building's records, and gives her this absolutely bone-chilling response. She says, room 828 is empty. And to prove it, she points to the key, hanging right there on the key rack behind her. The next tenant wasn't even scheduled to move in for another month. The room wasn't just quiet. It was totally, completely empty. Can you imagine walking back to your apartment after hearing that? Her heart must have been pounding out of her chest. And sure enough, that night, she hears it again. That same guck guck sound. This time, she flips on the light, and her blood just runs cold. The chair, her chair, the one she knew for a fact she had pushed neatly under her desk, was pulled out, and its back was resting right against that shared bathroom wall. The noise wasn't coming from next door. It was coming from inside her own room.
And from there, things just got worse. Over that first month, the haunting really ramped up. I mean, it started with the chair, right? But then it was the faucets in the bathroom turning on by themselves. Just full blast. The toilet would flush out of nowhere. She'd come home from her classes and the balcony light would be on, even though she was positive she'd turned it off before she left.
So by the end of that first month, Mudme is just living in this state of constant terror. But, fear can only last so long before another emotion takes over. And in this case, it was good old-fashioned anger. Because this haunting was about to hit her where it really hurts, her wallet.
Yeah, the utility bills for the first month get posted, and she's just stunned. Her electricity bill was over 2,000 baht. For a student who was barely even in her room, that's an absolutely insane amount. But it was also the proof she needed. The lights, the water, something was definitely turning them on while she was away.
And that was the final straw. She marches back up to our apartment, flings the door open, but she doesn't go in. She just stands there, right at the doorway, and absolutely lets loose. She starts yelling into the empty room, just furiously evicting her invisible, bill-racking-up roommate.
And you know what's crazy? It worked. Or it seemed like it did. For 3 whole weeks after she yelled at it, there was just silence. Nothing. The scraping noise was gone. The faucet stayed off. She actually thought she'd won. But then, one night, there's this frantic, desperate knocking on her door, and she's about to find out the problem wasn't solved at all. It had just moved. So she opens the door, and this woman she's never seen before just bursts into her apartment, absolutely terrified. Her name is Palm, and guess where she just moved in? Room 828. Yep, the empty room right next door.
And as this poor woman, Palm, is sobbing and telling her story, Mudme gets this cold, sinking feeling in her stomach. Because Palm is describing the exact same things. The Guck scraping sound, the balcony light turning on, even sounds of walking when no one's there. And that's when the horrifying truth hits her. She hadn't banished the ghost. She had just screamed at it so hard that it literally packed its spectral bags and moved into the apartment next door.
So for Palm, who's a med student and, very logical, the breaking point was this. She was so scared, she tried to pray to a little Buddha statue her mom had given her. And as she's praying, a voice, a real voice, whispers right into her ear. And what it said was just so chilling and mocking. That was it for her. She was done. She ran right out of there.
So, the next morning, these two women, total strangers just the night before, now united by this shared terror, they go down to the manager's office together. This was way beyond a noisy neighbor. Something was seriously wrong with the building itself, and they weren't leaving without some answers.
And this time, the manager, probably seeing she had no other choice, finally spills the beans. She tells them the history of the land the building was on. Turns out this shiny new apartment complex was built right on top of an old pond. And to build it, they had to cut down 3 huge, sacred trees that locals believed were home to spirits. And here's the kicker. They did it all without holding any of the proper spiritual ceremonies to, appease the spirits of the land. A huge no-no.
So now, faced with genuinely terrified tenants, the building management finally did what they should have done from the very beginning. They organized a big, building-wide ceremony. They brought in monks to bless the place and hopefully bring some peace to all those spirits they'd disturbed. And you know what? After that day, the hauntings just stopped. For good, in both rooms. So isn't that something? In the end, what actually got the ghost to move wasn't a prayer, it wasn't some ancient ritual. It was just a college student getting furious about her sky-high electricity bill. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? The whole story started because of a human problem and was solved by a very human reaction. And it leaves us with this final, kind of unsettling question. When we build our new modern world, what happens to the spirits whose homes we tear down to make room?